This client hasn't been able to get her nails done in over 3 months. She recently went through something traumatic and she let me share her story. So she was dating this guy for 5 years when they decided to get married. He was an accountant and had a business. My client noticed that he would buy expensive things like designer shoes and cars, but when she tried questioning it, he would just say that his business was doing well. Soon after the wedding, she found out he'd been cheating on her for years, so she packed all of her stuff and left. When trying to withdraw money one day, she found out he cleared out her savings, money that she spent years working for. Turns out he was never actually an accountant. He never even graduated college. To make matters worse, she lost her job due to COVID within that same period. Over the past few months, she had to find a new job, a new place to live, and a way to cope with all of this. She said doing her nails brightens up her day and gets her mind off of this craziness.
One time I was behind the register at Victoria's Secret. This customer walks in and immediately everybody spots her as a red flag. She's just picking up items, throwing them in her bag, not looking at sizes, not looking at colors. So everybody's like, Everyone's on their walkie like, watch this customer. She's coming to the fitting room. She's headed to the cash wrap. Somebody get her. Check her ID. Get her. Get her. She has a bag full of stuff. And guess who gets her at the register? Me. So she comes to my register and she dumps out her stuff and we're having a regular conversation. Hi, how are you? Yada, yada, yada. Her total comes up to probably between $700 to $900. It was expensive. My manager is at the register next to me talking to me on the walkie. Ashley, make sure you get that ID. Don't matter what she's using, make sure you get that ID. So I ask her for the ID because she's paying credit. Why do you need to ask for my ID? Just take it, run it. I'm like, no ma'am, I'm sorry, I need your ID for the purchase. She starts to raise her voice at me.
A 6th grade teacher asked her class the other day how many of them were Trump fans. And most of them not knowing what a Trump fan was and of course wanting to be liked by their teacher, they all raised their hands. Well, all except for little Johnny. The teacher looks over at little Johnny and says, Johnny, why are you being different again? And he says, well, because I'm not a Trump fan. And she says, well, why are you not a Trump fan? And he says, because I'm a Democrat. She says, really, why are you a Democrat? He says, well, my mom's a Democrat and my dad's a Democrat, so I'm a Democrat. She says, oh, really? Well, what if your mom was a moron and your dad was an idiot? What would that make you? Johnny smiles and says, a Trump fan.
This is a story of the time that I caught my neighbor's mom talking smack about me. So I don't know about you guys, but every single Wednesday in my middle school, we would have a bagel sale. And some people's parents would come in to help out. And my neighbor's mom was one of those parents. And I had a best friend at the time whose mom would also work at the bagel sales. But this best friend of mine, her mom never let us hang out with each other because she felt that I was a bad influence on her. When in reality, it was the complete opposite. She was the one that snuck the boys in her house, if you guys remember that story time, where they peed in a flower pot. So basically her mom wouldn't let us hang out. And sometimes my friend would go with her mom in the morning, basically as a ride to school, and to help out with the bagels too. And one day when she went in with her mom, my neighbor's mom also was there too. So my friend starts eavesdropping into their conversation, and my friend's mom brings me up and says how much of a bad kid I am and a bad influence. And my neighbor's mom was like, oh wow, that's my neighbor. Like, we always suspected something bad about her. Our whole entire neighborhood knows this about her. Basically making stuff up about me. So then I go home crying, tell my mom. This is the story of when my neighbor made me watch lesbian porn from when I was 4 years old up until I was 10 years old. So she was a year older than me, and since we were around the same age, our parents had us hang out with each other. I remember that I was 4 years old because she was in kindergarten and I wasn't yet. I remember one day I was waiting for her to get off the bus, and when she got off the bus, she took me into her computer room. She locked the door and told me that I can't tell anybody what she's about to show me. So it started off with just looking up lesbians kissing on YouTube. And obviously I had no idea what this was because my family is very conservative and I never learned about that. So this would go on probably every single time that we hung out, which was probably every day. And she even forced me to watch it in my own house, but there was no lock on my door, so we would put my toy boxes in front of the door so nobody would come in. Honestly, when I think about my childhood, that's the only thing that I really think about. And then it started getting physical. The earliest memory of it being physical was in her backyard on her trampoline. She had me go in a corner where nobody would see us.
This boy lied about his age just to date me. Story time. So back when my cute self was a senior in high school, there was this new girl that came to our school. Long story short, me and her ended up becoming super close. I went to her house, spent the night. Her family loved me. I mean, why wouldn't they? Anyways, she had a brother. We're gonna call him Binky. Me and Binky got pretty close. Now I want you guys to keep in mind, Binky didn't go to my school because their parents were divorced. So the sister who I was friends with lived with her mom, and Binky lived with his dad who lived in another city. But sometimes Binky would go to his mom's house, which is how I met him. Now that we got that out of the way, as me and Binky were getting closer, one day he asked me, "Hey, how old are you?" And I was like, "Oh, I just turned 17. How about you?" He told me, "Oh, I'm 17 too, but my 18th birthday is coming up." After a while, me and him eventually started dating. Then one day, I ran into his cousin who happened to go to my school. The rest of this story is crazy.
One thing I learned is when cops show up to a party, do not hesitate to run. There was a group of kids that stayed hiding in the basement. They hid in a closet, they hid in just like under the couch and rooms and shit. And then there was another group of kids who ran out the back door. Me and my buddy were part of that group. So we're all running like a free-for-all, and this kid's backyard is just straight wilderness. Me and my buddy end up getting separated, and I'm fucked because my phone is dead. We gotta be at least like a quarter mile into the fucking forest by now, so I'm freaking out. I need to find my buddy. We need to meet up and do what his dad told us to do. So I'm standing all alone in the woods, and I just start screaming, "Gary!" A few seconds goes by. I hear my buddy scream from a distance, "Gio!" So we keep screaming like that until we eventually find each other. And my buddy was just with two random girls that we didn't even know. They were staying by him because they were scared and they didn't know where to go. So now it's time to execute the plan his dad told us to do if shit went wrong. My buddy picks up.
This is the story of the time that I got caught shoplifting. So I was friends with this girl, I think it was my freshman year of high school. And one day we decided that we wanted to go to the mall after school. So her mom picked us up, and my friend had decided to take out all of her books out of her book bag and just bring her empty bag. I don't remember talking about it before we got there, but we were talking about how earlier that day in one of our classes, this kid that we were friends with was talking about how he finessed a backpack right from Kohl's and nobody even noticed. So we were like, wow, is it really that easy? Let's do it. So we go into JCPenney and we start taking a bunch of clothes into the dressing rooms. We took off the tags and put them in her bag. As she was leaving, she decided she wanted to finesse a new purse. So she was like, "Here, take my bag, and then I'm going to take a new one." So then we literally stand in the middle of JCPenney and we start praying that we don't get caught, for part 2. This is the time I got caught getting D-pics from a boy. So there was this girl on my bus when I was in 6th grade. She was in 7th grade. And she went on to tell me about how this kid was always Snapchatting her, sending her pictures of his junk, and how she was freaking out about it. And me being in 6th grade, very curious, I was like, oh, let me add him on Snap. So we started Snapchatting, flirting, whatever. I mean, I was still really little and developing and everything, so I was too nervous to take pictures of myself. So the next day on the bus, I ended up telling the girl, and I'm like, oh my god, he sent me the exact same thing, and she was like, no way, blah, blah. And we were basically just laughing about it because we thought it was funny. And this kid was in our school, and he was in her grade, by the way. A few weeks go on, and then she comes to the bus, and she's crying and whatnot, and she says that her mom looked through her phone and found the pictures. And she said her mom's gonna tell the school. So the same day, I get called to the principal's office, and there was a police officer.
My sister and I have always been mistaken as twins. I'm 19 and she's 16, but we have the same height, skin tone, and similar voice. She also has a habit of being a copycat, from the way I dress to hobbies, even piercings. I know it's cute if you look at it from the outside, but sometimes it gets annoying. Yeah, we are quite close too, but why does she always happen to pick up everything I pick up? One afternoon, I was tidying up some costumes in my college showroom and found a rather cute brown and pink wig. It looks like a mushroom. I put it on, think it looks rather funny, so I snapped a picture and posted it to my Instagram. I received a text from my sister asking if I really cut my hair. I didn't mention it was a wig. While I somewhat have a feeling that she might copy that too, I lied and replied yes. I came home that weekend and lo and behold, my sister emerged with the same silly brown and pink bob cut, except this one is on her permanent hair. She was surprised that I arrived with my hair still long, then realized that I lied to her. She was furious that she had to cut that silly hairstyle because she thought I had it. Our parents think that it's a really bad joke and wanted me to...
Story time. I babysat a lot of kids in my neighborhood, and there was this one night that I was babysitting a 2-year-old. It was around 10 o'clock at night, so the kid was sleeping, and I was just sitting in the living room. In the living room, there was a big TV, a couch, and then behind me, it was a wall with a giant window. So it was really late at night, I had nothing to do, so I was Snapchatting my friends. If you Snapchat anybody, I'm sure you know that sometimes you Snapchat really fast. You don't even know or look at what you're sending. I was mass snapping all my friends, and then one of them replied 10 minutes later. And he said, "Who's that guy behind you?" And I turned around and no one was there, so I'm like, he's playing a joke on me. But then I get another Snapchat from this friend I had, and she lives all the way across the country. They don't know each other. And she said, "I think there's someone outside." So I was really freaked out because I was alone. There was a giant window behind me. Apparently there was someone outside. I wasn't gonna call the child's parents because I didn't want to freak them out, but I was scared. So then I went around the house, locked all of the doors. Sorry, it's a really long story, like for part 2.
Story time about one of the worst customers ever. I got a new job at a coffee shop downtown. It was my first day out of training and I would be taking orders and making drinks on my own. I was a little nervous, but excited and ready to be by myself. Everything was going great until this woman came in. She came up to the counter and immediately noticed that I was new there. She said, "I'm a regular and come in almost every day. Write my order down and save it so I don't have to explain it to you again next time." At first I thought she was joking, so I smiled and laughed, but then I quickly realized that she wasn't kidding. She proceeded to order a very complicated drink, which I didn't mind. I was up for the challenge. I made her drink and handed it to her with a smile. Without even trying it, she said the color was off and requested I remake it. When I turned around to try again, she said, "Don't mess it up this time. It's not rocket science." I remade the drink, and this time she picked it up and looked at it, didn't try it, and complained that I put too much caramel in it and asked if I was trying to make her fat. I remade the drink a third time, doing everything she requested. This time she actually tried the drink and immediately spit it back into the cup. She then told me that I'm horrible at my job, called me incompetent and lazy, and of course, asked to speak to my manager. It only got worse from here.
Extremely toxic best friend story time. So when I was in 8th grade, there was this boy. And this boy would go around telling almost every girl that he liked her. And I was one of those girls. And he would do stuff with all of us. And there were like 11 of us. So we all hated each other. Especially this one girl, and we're gonna call her Abby. And every time we saw each other, we would be super mean to each other. Well, a year passed, we stopped talking to this kid. And I bumped into her at homecoming and basically apologized. So after that, we became best friends. And everything was good until every time I told her about a guy, she would start talking to them. Like this one boy that I was Snapchatting and talking to, she accidentally sent nudes to him and said, "Oh, sorry, I meant to send them to my boyfriend." So then she called one of my other best friends and said, "No, it actually wasn't an accident." And of course he told me because he was my best friend. So I was like, whatever, and stopped talking to the boy. And she did it again, like for part 2.
Story of the time a cop went in my car without my permission. So for a while, I was going to people's houses to do their nails. And I would do this in the summer, so a lot of my clients set up a table outside so that the smell didn't smell up their house too bad. I always feel rude to park in the person's driveway, so I usually park outside of their house on the side of the road. And this time in particular, I did just that, and we did her nails outside as well. At the time, my car had temp plates on it because I had just recently got it. And also my car is a BMW 2-door with all tinted windows, so you cannot see inside of it even if you tried. So I could understand why it looks a little bit suspicious. Luckily for me, my nail client's dog ended up running out of the fence into the front yard, right near my car. So I go with her to chase him, and I see the police officer opening up my car door. And I wasn't parked illegally or anything, and my temp plates weren't expired either. So he had no right to be opening up my car doors. So I ran over to my car and I was like, "What's going on? Why are you searching my car?" And he was like, "This is your car?"
Story time, my boyfriend wouldn't let me break up with him, so I cheated on him with his best friend. So we're gonna call my boyfriend Jay and his best friend Mike. Well, I met these two boys through my best friend, and I really liked Mike. Mike and I would talk all the time. We would FaceTime 24/7. But whenever the subject of dating came up, he said that he couldn't because his best friend really liked me. So he was trying to set me up with Jay, but not really because he really liked me. So I was like, okay, fine, whatever. I'll date Jay for a little bit and then I'll break up with him. Worst mistake of my fucking life. Every time I would try to break up with this kid, he would be like, "I'm gonna kill myself now." And he would send me videos with him holding up a knife to his neck, cutting his arms whenever I would say we're breaking up. So pretty much I was forced into that relationship. He was manipulative as fuck. It was just not a good situation. Well, the one day Jay was like, "Oh, do you want to come over Mike's house with me?" And of course I said yeah, because I literally was still in love with Mike, his best friend. And my parents were super strict, so I had to sneak over there, like for part 2.
Story of the time the owners of my school left a fake review on my Google account. So then I noticed that I signed into my Google account on Friday, and that's when the review was posted. It was posted at 4:45, which we got out of school at 4:30. So at this point, I was 100% positive that one of the owners of my school had written this fake review under my name, which is illegal. So I go into the office, and mind you, the owners of the school were husband and wife. And on Monday mornings, only the wife was there. So I go to her office and I'm like, hey, I'm here to talk to you about this review that was written underneath my name, but I never wrote it. And she pretended like I didn't just say that I didn't write it. And she was like, thank you so much. That was so kind of you. We're so happy to hear the good feedback. And I was like, yeah, but I didn't write it. And for a while, it was just us going back and forth, her playing stupid and me being like, I didn't write it. So then she calls her husband, puts him on speakerphone, and he proceeds to thank me for the review that I didn't write. And we go back and forth, and he plays stupid too, until I finally snapped, and I was like, I didn't write the review, and one of you did. And he was like, listen, if you don't feel this way about our school, then you could delete your review.
Crazy story time about how my sister and I found out that we were hooking up with the same guy. So I was a freshman, my sister was a sophomore, and there was this really cute guy in her grade that I liked. But I could never find a way to talk to him because we weren't in the same grade and had none of the same classes. And my sister and I were not close at all. Like, we didn't tell each other shit, we didn't really talk to each other or anything. So by that being said, we never told each other about the boys that we liked. We just didn't have that bond. Well, track season came around. So they called all the people down who wanted to do track, and I saw him walk past my classroom window, so I decided to go too. So I signed up for track, and him and I started to talk a little bit. We exchanged numbers, and he was popular, I wasn't, so he didn't want to be seen with me. So after attendance, we would go to this graveyard right by the track and hook up. Well, the next day, we had a meet in our school. So him and I went to the graveyard, hooked up, and that's when it started getting crazy like for part 2.